To introduce Yusef Komunyakaa, I don't want to tell you his biography. You've spent the entire semester studying his achievements, his biography. You don't need to hear all that because you already know it. Rather, I'd like to use some of Komunyakaa's words that he shared with us today and also that you'll find in your programs. In one of your programs, our publishing studies students chose a very apt quote from Komunyakaa. "Poetry helps me understand who I am," he says. But he also teaches us how scary that self-discovery can be. Today he elaborated on that. Poetry is not what we know, it's what we risk discovering. Komunyakaa goes on, "Poetry helps me understand the world around me." And one of Komunyaka's key words for how poetry teaches us about the world is inquiry, that poetry is a form of an inquiry. Above all, he says, what poetry has taught me is the fact that I need to embrace mystery in order to be completely human. But as he also says, in poetry, mystery combines with precision and conciseness. Mr. Komunyakaa, if you could just teach us a little more about poetry, we'd be most grateful.
I would like to say thank you for being here. I'll pick that up. Thank you. I hope I won't be doing that all night, right? Okay, I'm going to start with a poem. It's a very old poem that I wrote as an undergraduate at the University of Colorado. It's the first poem that I really decided to keep and include with my various collections. It's a poem entitled Instructions for Building Straw Huts. First, you must have unbelievable faith in water and women dancing with hands like playing harps for straw to grow stalks afar. You must understand the year that begins with your hands tied behind your back, a worship of dark totems weighed down with night birds that shift their weight and leave holes in the sky. You must know what's behind the shadow of a treadmill, the wind of the moon's reflection, and silent season reaching into red sunlit hills. You must know the hard science of building walls that sway with summer storms, locking arms to a frame of air, frame of oak, rooted to ancient ground where the door is constructed last, just wide enough for two lovers to enter on hands and knees. You must dance the weaver bird's song from mending water and light with straw, earth, mine, bright loom of grain, untortured by bushels of thorns. I suppose that's the first poem that I wrote that really sort of surprised me, because I didn't know exactly where it came from. It wasn't completely, I don't know if I completely comprehend the poem. When I went to California for graduate school, I got there early and I wrote a poem that became sort of instructive for me as a graduate student in creative writing, and it's called Safe Subjects. How can love heal the mouth shut this way, Say something worth breath. Let it surface. Recapitulate how fat leashes press down gently on a sex goddess's eyelids. Let truth have its way with us, like a fishhook holds to life, holds dearly to nothing worth sand. Pull it out, bringing with it hard facts, knowledge that the fine underbone of hope is also attached to inner self. Underneath it all, undressed. No, don't be afraid even to get Satan mixed up in this acknowledgement of thorns, meaning there's madness, the sperm in the egg, fear breathing in its blood sac, true accounts not so easily written off the sad book. Say something about pomegranates. Say something about real love. Yes, true love, more than pointed lips and pointed legs and sorrow's dark room of potash and blues. Let the brain stumble from its hiding place, from its cell block to the edge of oblivion, to come to itself, sharp tongue as a boar's grin in summer moss, where a vision rides the back of God at this masquerade, redemptive as a straight razor against a jugular vein, unacknowledged and unforgiven. It's truth we're after here, hurting for, out in the streets where my brothers killed each other's daughters, guardian angels, in the opera of dead on arrival. Say something that resuscitates us behind the mask as we stumble off into neon nights to loveless beds and a second scan of loneliness. Something political as dust and earthworms at work in the temple of greed and mildew, where bowed lamps cast down shadows like blueprints of graves. Say something for us who can't believe in the creed of nightshade. Yes, say something to us dreamers who decode the messes of dirt between ancient floorboards where black widow spiders lay translucent eggs in the skull of a dead mole under a dogwood in full bloom. I suppose I thought of that poem as being instructive, as a reminder for me during those 2 years at the University of California. Charm. I jumped between a cat and a bird. The cat cries as though I struck her with a stick. If animals possess souls, her cry is close to sin. She moves towards the bird. Women have moved gently towards me, and me towards them this way, some dance concealed under the skin. The bird sits perfectly lost like a flower, so red, lost behind the 5 colors of the cat's eyes brighter than truest memory of water. The cat has pierced him, deeper than bad luck, moving like a hand buried in the dark. Years ago, I stepped between a woman and man, at each other's throat, both turning against me. I tried to shoo the bird away. I pick him up, and a small heart flutters through me. The bird has no song left. I close my eyes. I place him on the ground. I back away. I would like to say that particular poem is about 2 different things that happened at 2 different times. The first time, I remember a bird being what they call charmed by a cat. And the other time, when I was about 19, stepping between a lover's quarrel, I suppose, and how those things sort of merge, you know. So it was instructive in that way. It took me a long time to write about my experiences in Vietnam. I'm going to just read a couple of those poems. The first one is entitled Camouflaging the Chimera. Camouflaging the Chimera. We tied branches to our helmets. We painted our faces and rifles with mud from a riverbank. Blades of grass hung from the pockets of our tiger suits. We wove ourselves into the terrain, content to be a hummingbird's target. We hugged bamboo and leaned against a breeze off the river, slow dragging with ghosts from Saigon to Bangkok, with women left in doorways, reaching in from America. We aimed at dark-hearted songbirds in our way station of shadows. Rock apes tried to blow our cover, throwing stones at the sunset. Chameleons crawl our spines, changing from day to night, green to gold, gold to black. But we waited till the moon touched metal, till something almost broke inside us. VC struggled with the hillside like black silk, wrestling iron through grass. We weren't there. The river ran through our bones. Small animals took refuge against our bodies. We held our breath, ready to spring the L-shaped ambush as the world revolved under each man's eyelid. You and I are disappearing. The cry I bring down from the hills belongs to a girl still burning inside my head. At daybreak, she burns like a piece of paper. She burns like foxfire in a thigh-shaped valley. A skirt of flames dances around her at dusk. We stand with our hands hanging at our sides while she burns like a sack of dry ice. She burns like oil on water. She burns like a cattail torch dipped in gasoline. She glows like the fat tip of a banker cigar, silent as quicksilver, a tiger under a rainbow at nightfall. She burns like a shot glass of vodka. She burns like a field of poppies at the edge of a rainforest. She rises like dragon smoke to my nostrils. She burns like a burning bush driven by a god-awful wind. Okay, the next poem is a sort of praise poem, I suppose we can say it that way. The poem is entitled Thanks. Thanks for the tree between me and a sniper's bullet. I don't know what made the grass sway seconds before the Viet Cong raised his soundless rifle. Some voice always followed, telling me which foot to put down first. Thanks for deflecting the ricochet against that anarchy of dust. I was back in San Francisco, wrapped up in a woman's wild colors, causing some dark bird's love call to be shattered by daylight. When my hands reached up and pulled a branch away from my face, thanks for the vague white flower that pointed to the gleaming metal, reflecting how it is to be broken like mist over the grass as we played some deadly game for blind gods. What made me spot the monarch on a single thread tied to a farmer's gate, holding the day together like an unfingered guitar string, is beyond me. Maybe the hills grew weary and leaned a little in the heat. Again, thanks for the dirt hand grenade tossed at my feet. Outside Chulai, I'm still falling through its silence. I don't know I don't know why the intrepid son touched the bayonet, but I know that something stood among those lost trees and moved only when I moved. I should say that in the Vietnam-related poems, I started writing those poems in New Orleans. I think it was the month of August, and you know August. It's very hot. It was debris. I was renovating a house. There's all the debris and dust and what have you, and I had a pad of paper at the foot of the ladder, and I would descend. You know, the heat sort of rises, right? I would sort of descend and write down a line. But I found myself writing on a poem entitled Somewhere Near Phu Bai, and that's how the Vietnam poem started. And the second of those poems, which is actually the last of the poems in the book. No, I think I'm going to read a poem before that called Losses. At the Nam, he lost himself, not trusting his hands with loved ones. His girlfriend left, and now he scouts the edge of town, away, always with one ear cocked and ready to retreat, to blend with hills poised like a slip knot becoming a noose. Unlike punches stakes, his traps only snag the heart. Sometimes he turns in a circle until a few faces from Dak To track him down, a dress or scar in the distance can nail him to a dogwood. Down below, to his left, from where the smog rises, a small voice reaches his ear somehow. No, never mind. He's halfway back, closer to a ravine, going deeper into saw vines and behind White Cove, following his mind like a dark lover away from car horns and back far, where only days are stolen. I would like to say that in that particular poem, I went with a veteran to sort of talk other veterans out of the hills in California. And that's what that poem is about. But I understand that in the South, there are also veterans who retreated into the woods. And I suppose at the mercy of talking themselves out of the terrain. Facing it, my black face fades, hardened inside the black granite. I said I wouldn't, damn it, no tears. I'm stone, I'm flesh. My clouded reflection eyes me like a bird of prey, the profile of night slanted against morning. I turn this way, the stone lets me go. I turn that way, I'm inside. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial again, depending on the light to make a difference. I go down to 58,022 names, half expected to find my own, and letters like smoke. I touch the name Andrew Johnson. I see the booby trap's white flash, name shimmer on a woman's blouse. But when she walks away, the names stay on the wall. Brushstrokes flash, a red bird's wings cutting across my stare, the sky, a plane in the sky, a white vet's image floats closer to me. Then his eyes look through mine. I'm a window. He's lost his right arm inside the stone. In the black mirror, a woman's trying to erase names. No, she's brushing a boy's hair. And I'm changing the rhythm by reading this next poem. I spent a lot of time in Australia. One of the places I first read in Australia is a place called Harold Park Hotel. And the title of his poem is Blue Light Lounge Sutra for the Performance Poets at Harold Park Hotel. The need gotta be so deep, words can't answer simple questions. All night long, don't stumble off the tongue and color the air indigo. So deep, fragments of gut and flesh cling to the song. You gotta get into it so deep, salt crystallizes on eyelashes. The need gotta be so deep, you can vamp up ghosts and not feel broken. Till you know more than a half ounce of gold and painful brightness. You gotta get into it, blow that saxophone, so deep all the sex and dope in this world can't erase your need to howl against the sky. The need gotta be so deep you just can't wiggle your hips and rise up out of it. Chaos in the cosmos, motor man and the pepper pot. You gotta get hooked into every hungry groove. So deep the bomb locked in rust opens like a fist. Into it so deep rhythm is pre-memory. The need gotta be basic, animal need to see and know the terror we are made of, honey, because if you want to dance this boogie, be ready to let the devil use your head for a drum. I think that poem is about insinuation. It may even have a slight blues riff. Next one is, I wrote it as just one single sentence, almost. February in Sydney. Dexter Gordon's tenor sax plays April in Paris inside my head all the way back on the bus from Double Bay. Round midnight, the 50s, cool cobblestone streets resound footsteps of bebop musicians with whiskey-laced voices from a boundless dream in French. Bud, Prez, Webster, and the Hawk, their names run together riffs. Painful gods jive talk through bloodstained reeds and shiny brass where music is anesthetic. Unreadable faces float like toned pages across the windshield. An old anger drips into my throat, and I try thinking something good, letting the precious bad settle to the salty bottom. Another scene keeps repeating itself. I emerge from the dark theater, passing a woman who grabs her red purse and hugs it to her like a heart attack. Tremolo. Dexter comes back to rest behind my eyelids. A loneliness lingers like a civil needle under my black skin as I try to feel how it is to scream for help through a horn. February in Sydney is rather warm. The next poem is entitled Blackberries. They left my hands like a printer's or thieves before a police blotter and pulled me into early morning's terrestrial sweetness, so thick the damp ground was consecrated, where they fell among a garland of thorns. Although I could smell old lime-covered history, at 10, I'd still hold out my hands and berries fell into them, eating from one and filling a half a gallon with the other. I ate the mythology and dreamt of pies and cobbler, almost needful as forgiveness. My bird dog spot, odd, blue jays and thrashers, the mud frogs, and rich blackness hid from daylight. An hour later, beside City Limits Road, I banished a gleaming can in each hand, limboed between worlds, repeating $1. The big blue car made me sweat. Wintertime crawled out of the windows. When I leaned closer, I saw the boy and girl my age in the wide back seat smirking. It was then I remembered my fingers burning with thorns among berries too ripe to touch. Another poem that attempts to capture an earlier moment of distilled observation, I suppose we can say, is a poem entitled Believing in Iron. The hills my brothers and I created never vanished, and it took years to discover how the world worked. We could look at a tree of blackbirds and tell you how many were there, but with the scrap dealer, our math was always off. Weeks of lifting and grunting never added up to much, but we couldn't stop believing in iron. Abandoned trucks and cars were held to the ground by thick, nostalgic fingers of vines strong as a dozen sharecroppers. We'd return with our wheelbarrow, groaning under a new load, yet tiger lilies live better in their languid August domain. Among paper and coke ballers, foundry smoke erased sunsets, and we couldn't believe iron left men bent so close to the earth as if the ore under their breath weighed down the gray sky. Sometimes I dreamt how our hills washed into a sea of metal, how it all became an anchor for a warship, a bomber, out over trees with blooms, too red to look at. Next poem is entitled Slam Dunk and Hook. Fast breaks, layups, with Mercury's insignia on our sneakers. We outmaneuvered the footwork of bad angels. Nothing but a hot swish of strings like silk 10 feet out. In the roundhouse labyrinth our bodies created, we could almost last forever, poised in midair like storybook sea monsters. A high note hung there, a lone second off the rim. Wits corkscrew up and dunking balls exploded the skull cap of hope and good intention. Linky, all hands and feet sprung rhythm. We were metaphysical when girls cheered on the sidelines. Tangled up in the falling, muscles were a bright motor, double flashing to the metal hoop nailed to our oak. When Sonny Boy's mama died, he played nonstop all day so hard our backboard splintered, glistened with sweat. We rolled the ball off our fingertips. Trouble was there, slapping a blackjack against an open palm, drive to the inside, and glide like a sparrow hawk. Layups, fast breaks. We had moves we didn't know we had. Our bodies spun on swivels of bone and faith through a lyric slipknot of joy, and we knew we were beautiful and dangerous. I don't exactly play basketball anymore, except off and on. The next poem is entitled Outre Drum. Gazelle, I killed you for your skin's exquisite touch, for how easy it is to be nailed to a board, weathered raw as white bushel paper. Last night, I heard my daughter praying for the meat here at my feet. You know it wasn't anger that made me stop my heart till the hammer fell. Weeks ago, I broke you as a woman once shattered me into a song beneath her weight before you slouched into that grassy hush. But now, I'm tightening lashes, shaping hard as if around a rib cage stretched like 5 bowstrings. Ghosts cannot slip back inside the body's drum. You've been seasoned by wind, dust, and sunlight. Pressure can make everything whole again. Brass nails tacked into the ebony wood, your face has been carved 5 times. I have to drive trouble from the valley, trouble in the hills, trouble on the river too. There's no cola nut, palm wine, fish, salt, or calabash. A doom, a doom, a doom, a doom, a doom. Now, I've beaten a song back into you. Rise and walk away like a panther. Okay, I'm going to read a poem entitled Blue Dementia. From a different book. In the days when a man could hold a swarm of words inside his belly, nestled against his spleen singing. In the days of night riders, when life tongued to read till blues and sorrows sung, called out of the deep night, another man done gone. Another man done gone. In the days when one could lose oneself, all up inside love that way, and then moan on the bone till the gods cried out in someone's sleep. Today, already, I've seen 3 dark-skinned men discussing the weather with demons and angels, gazing up at the clouds and squinting down into iron grates along the 5 streaks of luminous encounters. I double-checked my reflection in plate glass and wonder, am I passing another Lucky Thomason, a Marion Brown, cornered by a blue dementia, another dark-skinned man who woke up dreaming one morning and then walked out of himself dreaming? Did this one there to step on a crack in the sidewalk, to turn a midnight corner and never come back whole, or did he try to stare down a look that shoved the blade into his heart? I mean, I also know something about night riders and catgut. Yeah, honey, I know something about talking with ghosts. I suppose that poem also has an echo of the blues. I'm going to read, I think I got time. I'm going to read a few poems that haven't been collected. The first of those poems, I think, is a poem entitled Islands. A couple years ago, I was invited to go to St. Lucia to celebrate Derek Walcott's birthday. I think it was his 82nd birthday. And I wrote this poem. It's in a collection entitled The Emperor of Atlantis, still in progress. Islands. An island is one great eye, gazing out, a beckoning lighthouse, searchlight, a wishbone compass, a counterweight to the stars. When it comes to outlook and point of view, a figure stands on a rocky ledge, peering out towards an archipelago of glass on the mainland. A seagull's wings touching the tip of a high wave out to where the brain may stumble. But when the mind clambs down from its high, craggy lookout, we know it is truly a stubborn thing and has to leaf through pages of dust and light, through pre-memory and folklore, remembering fires roared down there till they pushed up through the seafloor, and plumes of ash covered the dead, shaken awake whirls away, and silence filled up with centuries of waiting. Sea urchin, turtle, and crab came with earthly know-how, and one bird arrived with a sprig in his beak. Before everything clouded with cries, a millennium of small deaths, now topsoil, and seasons of blossoms in a single seed. Light edged along salt-crusted stones across a cataract of blue water, and lost sailors' parrots spoke of sirens, the last words of men buried at sea. Someone could stand here, contemplating the future, leafing through toned pages of St. Augustine, or the prophecies by fishermen, translating spur and folly down to taproot. The dreamy-eyed boy still in the man, the girl and the woman, a sunny forecast behind today, but tomorrow's beyond words. To behold a body of water is to know pig iron and mother wit. Whoever this figure is, he will soon return to dancing through the aroma of dagger's log, ginger lily, bougainvillea, between chants and strains struck till gourds rally the healing air, until the church steeple birds fly sweet darkness home. Whoever this friend or lover is, he intones redemptive harmonies. To lie down to remembrance is to know each of us is a prodigal son or daughter, looking out beyond land and sky, the chemical and metaphysical beyond falling and turning water wheels in the colossal brain of damnable gods, a eureka held up to the sun's blinding eye, born to gaze into fire, After conquering frontiers, the mind comes back to rest, stretching out over the white sand. Fortress. Maybe this poem comes slightly back to Louisiana. I just wrote it a few months ago. Fortress. Now, I began with these two hands held before me as blessing and weapon, blackbirds and fierce flight and instruments of touch and consolation. This sign means stop. And this one, of course, means come forth, friend. I draw a circle in the red iron clay around my feet where no evil spirit dares to find me. One's hands held at this angle over a boy's head or a roof over a sanctuary. I am a greenhorn in my fortress in the woods, with my right eye pressed to a knothole. I can see a buzz in the persimmon tree. It's right letting go, a tiny white cross in each seed. The girl's fiery jump rope strikes the ground. I see the back door of that house close to the slow creek where a drunken, angry man stumbles across the threshold every Friday. I see forgiveness, unbearable twilight, and these two big hands know too much about hammer and nail, plank, and uneasy sky. Hewn stone and mortar is another world, and sometimes a tall gate comes first. Then huge wooden barrels of grain, flour, salted meat, and quicklime before 28 crossbows in 4 towers. And just a couple of last poems. Okay, let me read another praise poem. No, 3 more poems. First one is Ode to the Oud. That's an instrument, oud. Gourd-shaped muse, swollen with wind and the mulberry. Tell me everything you're made of, little desert boat of Ra. Oblong box of Bethlehem doves, pecking pomegranate seeds out of the air. You're the poet's persona, his double in the high priest's 3rd chamber. Each string a litany of stars over the Sahara. Pear-shaped traveler, strong but so light. Is there a wishbone holding you together? I wish I knew how to open you up with an eagle's feather or a pick whittled from buffalo horn, singing alive the dust of Nubia. Rosewood seasoned long ago, I wish I could open your 12 mouths with kisses. I envy one blessed to master himself by rocking you in his lonely arms, tongue strung in a roar. I wish I could open every sound in you. Little ship of sorrow, bend your voice to the names of heroes and courtesans. birds and animals, prayers and love songs swum from your belly. Oh, to the saxophone. I've heard men push their thoughts and dreams into you, making the reed speak and moan through your shape. Breath so close to a human voice, it says damnation and beatitude. I know men who have kissed doubt into brass and heard each one say, life, tear me down to a naked sigh on a roadside bloody with poppies. I could go on this way till I'm kneeling before the seventh son. I've heard them pour hosannas, field hollers, the color of a dress turned in a corner, everything into you. Sometimes on the half of what's poured in comes out. But I know immortality can step into a semi-dark basement at the 2 a.m. hour and hug a man. I've seen them totally illuminated or barely raised from the dead, distant cities echoing footsteps. All the old gospels and curses are inside this cornucopia of giving. And all one has to do is turn you towards a sunset or spotlight up to the sky when he's down. The last poem, I should preface this poem by saying, this is 40 lines of a continuing poem that is one sentence, and I've been telling myself that it may be even a small book, because I'm still writing it. Tells Requiem. So when the strong, unholy high winds whiplash over the soul-off marshlands, eaten back to a sigh of salt water, the crescent city was already shook down to her pylons, her floating ribs, her spleen and backbone, left trembling in old world facades and postmodern lethargy, lost to waterlogged memories and quick claim deeds, exposed for all eyes, damnable gaze, plumb lines and heart-throb ballads and water tabor, and already the last ghost song of the Choctaw and Chippewa was long gone, no more than a drunken curse among the oak and sweet gum leaves, a tally, a broken treatise and absences, echoing cries of birds over the barrier islands inherited by the remittance man, scallywag, and King Cotton, and already the sky was falling in on itself, calling like a cloud of seagulls gone ravenous as the Gulf, reclaiming its ebb and flow chart, while the wind banged on shutters and unhinged doors from their frames and unshingled the low-ridged roofs, while the believers hum Precious Lord in Deep River as the horsehair plastered walls gallop along with the surge. Already folklore began to rise up from the buried laddygags and sluice, pussing beneath the Big Easy, rolling between and through itself, caught in some downward tug and turn, like a world of love affairs backed up in a stalled inlet, a knelt-down army of cypress, a testament to how man dreamt land out of water, where bedrock was only the heart's bumping grind, his deep dark churn and acceleration blows it down to those unmoored timbers, already nothing but water, mumbling as the great eye lingered on its question, then turned, the gauzy, genitalia of Bacchus and Zulu left dangling from magnolias and rain trees already.
long does it normally take you to write a poem? How much time do you spend thinking about it? Or?
You know, it really depends on the poem.
Okay.
Like the last poem I read from Oxford American magazine. The editor at Oxford wanted me to write a response to Katrina, and I said I would. And I knew I wanted it to be one sentence, and that poem is still in progress. There are other poems I can write in the single setting, but let's face it, the way the mind works, the poem has already been going on through images, through sound. Sometimes the image, one isn't fully aware where the poem is going to go, and then a sort of tonal continuity happens. There are some poems been going on for a very long time, and they still haven't emerged. So it really depends.
When you were writing Facing It, you spoke of a red bird and a plane.
Pardon me, which one?
Facing It?
Facing it?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
You
yes.
spoke of both a red bird and a plane. Was one of them actually physically there, or were both of them a memory?
No, I was talking about really the in the quality of that stone, the black stone, the memorial. It reflects like a mirror. One can see one's face, but you also can see other things happening within the context of the environment. One thing that I don't put in that poem that I've tried to go back to is the fact that the stone, when it's wet, the names momentarily disappear. And when it dries, they're there in the forefront, facing us again. So yes.
Okay. I know that Vietnam veterans often have a lot of like emotional fallout, and I was wondering does writing help you cope with like the memories and like what you experienced as far as a coping mechanism?
Not exactly. I suppose I've worked with Vietnam veterans. When I was at the University of Colorado, I worked for the Counseling Center, and I worked with some veterans. It really depends on the person, I think, how we deal with things. Not that one can evade those images or anything like that, but it's how we deal with them.
I know you have a poem called Glory. With that poem, I know you talk about how the men play baseball. In comparison with slam, dunk, and hook, you're basically talking about you playing with, fellow, people who you knew in the neighborhood playing, compared to Glory, where you were just watching them play.
Actually, I'm talking about young men who had typical jobs, and on the weekend they would play baseball, and it was their moment of glory, essentially. I think it is a remembered image, but I wasn't out there playing with them. Does that sort of answer the question? Okay, thank you.
I meant actually with Slam Dunk and Cook, like, were you playing with them compared to, you know, how you said you were talking about how you watched them play, but like with Glory, like, were you playing with them during, like, were you writing about you playing with them during Slam Dunk and Cook?
Not exactly. Okay, I'm gonna try this complicated strategy once more. It was based on an observation, and I think it's a quality of observation. I remember every move that these young men, and they're persistent, plan. But I think it has to do with quality of observation, that it's penetrated my psyche, and I can still see them plan. And I tried to capture that. Pretty straightforward. Does that make sense? Okay.
How does your poems find your life?
How my poems, I suppose I'm still writing. I always thought that I would go back. I had a triple major at the University of Colorado, and I always thought I would go back to psychology, even up until the last 15 years. Now I've given up that idea. But I'm still interested in psychology. I'm interested in history, a little bit of everything, really. How it affected my life. It keeps me observing. Let's say it that way. Yeah, it keeps me observing.
I noticed through a couple of your poems that you come back to the color red, and I was just kind of wondering your relationship with it, or what are some words or feelings that you associate with it personally?
Well, that's so interesting because someone mentioned the red bird, and I thought that was going to be the question. Red. I have a book that's been edited by a young critic, and it's entitled Condition Red. And he's looking at some of the red motifs. It's a very vivid color, and I think it has everything to do with celebration in life. So maybe that's the reason. Also, in where I live in New Jersey, maybe this is, but there's a red bird, a cardinal, that comes every year. And I suppose I'm thinking of it as a way of continuing to use red. It's just a color. Blue is my favorite color.
In the poem, You and I Are Disappearing, like, did you actually see the young girl?
No. I saw her in my psyche, my imagination. You know, the imagination is so important. It is that which really makes us human. This is what I feel. Even every physical object was first imagined in an abstract way, and then it became the physical object. It's amazing what the mind can do. I suppose technology might be interfering with that, or it has the potential of doing that.
In your poem, Family Tree, Is that a reflection on your personal life, or is that a reflection on somebody else's?
It's a combination. Yes. I won't say any more.
I just have a question about, as a writer, were you ever afraid to put out your work?
Was I ever afraid to put out my work? Okay. That's an interesting question because I have some students who are apprehensive sometimes about putting their work out. I suppose I had a where I was writing, at the time I first started writing, everyone just supported my work. The community. It was a community of ideas, college town. So I never really thought about, should I be afraid of embracing the words I put on paper? Maybe I should have. No. I don't think so.
Your poem, Eyeball Television, was that you, the prisoner, or was that somebody else that you wrote that about?
You know, my other favorite word is empathy. I could empathize with such an individual to the extent that, yeah, I was there, but not as a prisoner of war. I don't think I would be standing up here. But yes, I was there in my imagination.
If you could only choose one of your poems to be published, which would it be?
The poem I'm working on. That's always my answer.
Can you talk about music in your poetry?
Music, gosh. I think we internalize music. Also, I think the voice is a musical instrument, and it's very physical. The body is, well, the body is all part of the system, isn't it? We hear the sound coming from us, and it automatically takes us back to the oral tradition. That's what poetry comes out of. So poetry is supposed to be read, but also experienced by hearing it. This is what I believe. And sometimes a poem can do both. I have a new book out called Testimony, and it's all about jazz-influenced poems. Just came out last month. And it's interesting because I should say a little bit about Testimony. A radio director in Australia asked me to write on Charlie Parker. I love Parker's music. And I said, yeah, of course. And then I agonized about what I had said yes to. I had to come all the way back to the States to actually write it. And it's 14 short parts, 14 movements. It's more than that, really, because it's two movements, maybe even more, in each part. They use 32 musicians, 9 singers, and an actor to actually produce it. So your music is always there. Yes.
I guess speaking from jazz influences, just how jazz has drawn influence from many different styles of music, like rock in the 80s,
Yes.
and modern jazz kind of getting hip-hop beats.
Mm.
How have your influences changed throughout the years?
How has my influence changed? To the extent of what I embrace in music?
Or just more your writing style, have you noticed that as the years, has it changed? And have you found different inspirations and influences that affected your writing style?
I do think that it is changing. And I can't put my fingers on it, but I think it has to do with travel. Reading very closely Eastern European writers, I felt like I was being changed, and spending time in Poland, I felt like I was being changed. And I wasn't really fully conscious of it, though. Yes.
In your poem, "You and I Are Disappearing," I kind of noticed the main focus seems to be about a man who can't get rid of the image of a woman that he lost, and that would imply that the memory of this woman can't disappear from this guy's mind. Were you trying to draw a kind of like an opposite perspective from the title "You and I Are Disappearing" to the fact that she's not really disappearing from his mind?
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. But I should say that's a possibility. As far as meaning of poems, I like the idea that a poem can contract or expand, usually expansion. And often I say, it's what the reader brings to the poem to keep the poem alive. That way it's not just pinned down to one meaning. Does that make sense? Yes.
Okay, one more question.
How do you encourage the students who are apprehensive?
How do I encourage the students who are apprehensive? I suppose I'd say imitate Emily Dickinson. She kept going, right? She was sending her poems out even, but they weren't being embraced. And yet, what a great treasure. Okay, thank you.